Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my monologues. Well, today is not so much my monologue, it's the monologue of somebody else who sent me a reasonably long email, but I thought it was worth reading out because it's all about distraction and how we are distracted. We're being distracted all the time. Now, most of us who watch my channel and these sort of channels know this. We know we're being distracted. And whilst I'm not really trying to be in the business of fear porn, although, you know, that's the thing that gets people to watch videos these days. If you put a video out which is gentle, nice and, polite and positive and those sort of things, people aren't bothered. And I suppose the reason is there's a lot of troubles in the world and people get very distracted by those troubles, thinking that many of them are going to pass. And I don't believe that most of them will. And I have a very positive outlook on the whole thing. However, we do and we are constantly being distracted. So this is an email from a chap called Mark, and he has some pretty interesting ideas. So let's have a look and dive straight into it. He says, how's this for a distraction? Neil Oliver brought up an interesting thought the other day. Why now, after 50 years of child sex abuse, is there so much focus on it? We know that the authorities are covering it up, and it is not just the usual suspects, but also important people in power with a lot to lose that have taken part in this sick ritual. That is why only a certain few will be thrown under the bus to distract attention from the elites. There was a film not so long ago called Don't Look Up with Jennifer Lawrence. Nowadays, it's worth looking up, as they, I believe, have created the perfect distraction, hence the previous comment on sex abuse. I believe they have created the perfect storm. We were informed not that long ago that by 2025, the military would be in charge of the weather. Well, it is now time to look up. But where have all the chemtrails gone? Yes, I mean, it's very true, actually. In the last few days, down here on the south coast where I am, we haven't seen so many chemtrails, although today is a very overcast day. And somebody did send in an email to me saying they are doing this at night time and early in the morning because it's still dark. Anyway, he says for the last 5 days, certainly from Gateshead to Lincolnshire on the eastern side of our land, the skies have been crystal clear with freezing days and nights. Only a few aircraft are to be seen in the skies, and none of them leaving chemtrails. Where did they all go? The few flying, leaving condensation trails a few inches along, probably a bit more than a few inches, but that's how it seems when you look up, isn't it? Disappearing in a few minutes, like I remember 50 years ago when I was a kid marvelling at the possibility of flight. So, let's look at creating a perfect storm, he says. To quote David Icke, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. They are slowly but surely implementing this plan below to get rid of the majority of us, but starting with the old and vulnerable. They got serious in 2020, starting with the care homes. Yes, and we all remember what happened back then. The great culling, as he calls it, started back in 9/11. This theory seems to have come from more than one source. And he goes into some of these sources. Here we are, Deagle report. Now, many people will know that. And I think if you try to find it online, it's been taken off. But there are a number of people who have copies of it when it did. Attached. He did attach it to me, but I haven't got it here. Attached kindly by our friend Nicholas Martin. Thank you, Nicholas. Deagle, an outfit that has advised several US presidents for several years, dropped this chart below on the internet with no credible explanation. And then it mysteriously disappeared without notice. And basically the Deagle chart shows that there is going to be a rapid depopulation of all the countries of people mysteriously, and particularly at this time now. And I think, I can't remember, I haven't got it in front of me, but it was something like in the UK that where there's 70 million, it would go down to 15 million, something like that. I mean, a massive depopulation, you would say. Where have they all gone? Also, number 2, he says, introduction of climate crisis at the 90s Rio summit and the introduction of energy-saving bulbs over the last 20 years and new regulations to push the narrative. Do you remember the 60 and 100 watt bulbs now outlawed from being manufactured? I do remember them and I used to enjoy them. I believe it was getting the public used to lower energy consumption in a quest to save the planet while slowly increasing the price of electricity through privatization by robbing the customer to pay shareholders. Now, there are some that will say that these energy saving bulbs, especially the LED ones, are not because of the colour, something to do with the colour or the way they work, is very bad for the retina, and it can lead to blindness. But as I say, that's what some people say. Number 3, 2022, create a war with 2 former Eastern Bloc countries, blow up a pipeline and force up the price of energy. 4, to help the vulnerable from energy poverty, a UK issue a winter fuel payment scheme to mainly pensioners, even though the price of energy has fallen back. He says, see last video. I'm not quite sure which video he's talking about there. But 2024, he says, a new government find a black hole in the UK budget of 22 billion. They must have had amnesia, as the last government, along with the new one, has sent 12 billion to aid that war and 10 billion to foreign aid. 6, one of the responses to the black hole, stop the $500 million winter fuel payments to the pensioners. Yes, and we've seen a particularly cold winter this year, have we not? 7, December 2024, mysterious fog. What was that all about? Reported around the world, UK, USA and Canada, reports of people coming down with what looks like flu, plus seasonal flu. Only yesterday, the meter reading man confirmed flu was rife in South Yorkshire. 8, we're also hearing reports of possible energy blackouts due to the wind not blowing and the wind turbines have stopped turning. Is mainstream media programming the viewer to get them to think about using their energy sparingly? Well, we've all been told, have we not, that these energy things, the wind turbines and the solar are the future, and yet at the moment there's barely any sunshine. We had a day of sunshine yesterday, I admit it, but mostly throughout the winter you're not going to get much electricity from there. So it just goes to show this is all a load of old baloney. Where are we? Now, at 9, we have the perfect storm to get rid of the vulnerable, especially the old. A report at number 10 says, a while ago, which was mentioned in Parliament, was that thousands would be at risk of death through hypothermia if the winter fuel payments were stopped. To put you in the mindset of the elderly, I recount my father, a butcher in Barnsley. He had a meat round, a concept lost today. He would deliver meat to old ladies before they had to sell up due to his customers being all scooped up in councils at care homes. In the 80s, I would go with him on an evening and saw firsthand the likes of widowers, usually living in one room at winter time, huddled around an electric fire, a 40-watt light bulb, wrapping themselves in a blanket to keep warm. Their mindset was, excuse me, I have to save for a rainy day. The sad part for them was it was chucking it down, but they didn't realise how often were they told to save for a rainy day. Conclusion. How many of the elderly and the vulnerable can afford to turn up heating and enjoy a proper meal? The outcome? When the death toll is counted, I'm sure there will be outrage from the top, a useless inquiry set up at massive cost to the taxpayer, mostly paid to their friends, but no one to blame. No one will go to prison instead of declaring the usual systematic failure. Yeah. The solution: we will have to introduce universal income and digital bank accounts, obviously using digital ID to make sure that no one cheats the system and to stop this from ever happening again. I believe the media and the politicians are no different from magicians that are saying, look over there at my lovely assistant dancing while I mess about behind the curtain. And I think that's very true. I think that Mark has a point there, that we are being distracted with all this nonsense about fuel, energy, the global warming myth, of course, which is a complete load of old nonsense, made and invented up by the Club of Rome. And we get distracted by all of this. And in the meantime, of course, these terrible policies that are being put forward and all the distractions is there to potentially get rid of a lot of people. And the elderly and the vulnerable will be the first targeted. We know about the 15-minute cities. We know that they want to do digital IDs. We know about the face recognition technology. It does seem to be a very grim future for a lot of people. And unless we push back and we turn our backs on these policies and say, actually, no, then they will come into fruition. However, I do have a much more positive outlook on that. While there's so much of this being reported, we have to be careful, especially YouTubers like me, that we don't do the devil's job and put the fear into people and keep people down. I believe that actually you can be aware of it, you can laugh at it, you can poke fun at their policies and keep our vibrations high, to keep our mental attitudes high and say, actually, no, not putting up with this. Don't be silly. This is not a fait accompli. Yes, you've got your plans. Yes, we can start to see them. The truth is out like a lion and it's roaming free, and like light, it will shine in the dark. And I think the more that we express what's going on, as long as we don't get into fear and go, oh, that's it, we're all doomed, then we will, as long as we don't do that, we will have a chance, and we will also be able to push back and say, no, this isn't happening. Why are we going to put up with it? So I have a much more rosier, maybe tinted glasses. I don't think they're that tinted, but anyway, I do think that we have a bright future and things will change. Not looking for a saviour to save us. We need to take back the responsibility ourselves. I keep saying that. We need to be on the lookout and put our hands up and say, no, thank you very much. Very kind of you, but we're not having it. We need to be the ones that make the change, not look to anybody else, a Superman or a superpower or somebody else coming in. If that happens, then that's all well and good. But let us take back responsibility for ourselves. Observe what is happening, yes, but let's not put ourselves into fear and go, that is the only way that is going to happen. No, I don't believe it. I don't think you believe it. I think we have a positive and bright future ahead of us. It's up to us to make it so. Thank you for watching.